Oh, now it's working.
Wait a minute, Shelley, wait a minute. Okay, Shelley.
Okay, we're ready to start. And my name is Shelley Goldberg. I'm the president of the Computer Club. Welcome to our March presentation meeting. And we're a little bit light on attendance today, but nevertheless, you're all in for a treat. We have a really good program for you. So without further ado, let's start out. As we normally do, we go through a few things before our main presentation. So we will be going over our financial report, talk about membership, computer club matters, and our classes. And since this is an open meeting, open to all residents in Sun City, we'll talk about the Sun City community, and then we'll go on to our main presentation. Jeff Stipes, who is the who heads up our photography subgroup, and is very knowledgeable in the photography field, will give you an excellent presentation on how to take photos with your smartphone, iPhone, or Android smartphone. And looking at our treasurer's report, our financial report, not too many changes. We did have a little bit of an expense purchasing our deep freeze software that we use on the computers in the lab, and that's what allows us to revert the computers back to the way they were after you mess things up coming into the lab. So other than that, it's pretty much the similar to what we had last month. The Grafton Food Pantry is now up to $191 donated, so that continues to increase. That's a result of 2 months of donations. Our membership is rising. We currently have 1,714 members. So we are quite a large group. So thank you everybody for your support to the Computer Club. And as you all know, we're now meeting on the second Thursday of each month for these presentations. So the next one will be on Thursday, April 9th, and then Thursday, May 14th, and so on. With free coffee and donuts. And I guess we'll have to see how things go, if we have to make any changes. Just by a show of hands, how many people actually have watched one or more of the videos? Because we record all of these videos, all of these presentations that you see here, all of the meetings and the presentations. And they're all uploaded to YouTube on the internet, and you can get to them by going to the Computer Club's website, where you find a nice, easy link to get to it. How many have actually watched one or more of those? Okay, so that's a decent crowd. And just again, by a show of hands, if we did need to make changes in for one or more meetings, if we were to do a meeting without a live audience and just uploaded it to to YouTube, how many of you would actually like to watch that on the over the internet? Essentially. Okay, so that's something, you know, we can consider and see how things go.
They would probably want donuts airdrop.
With Bob Vivero's drone, I could just, drop them off.
Yeah, well, you just have to order through your, you know, online orders and have it delivered. It can be dropped through Amazon or Walmart or what have you. That you're doing this to.
Shelley, ask Kim.
Two questions.
Yeah.
We tried to get the video out there. We had a different system before, but then they want $100 a month and we said, no, I'm not doing that. So the old system, as soon as we entered the meeting, the video was available. Now we upload it to YouTube, and sometimes it's not there, and I have to take the computer and record on the computer and upload it. So I have to upload it again. So sometimes it's not until the next day it doesn't get uploaded. So but we do put a link on the Computer Club webpage. If you go there, when the new video is available, it will be on the Computer Club webpage. It will be on the YouTube window. So just hopefully you can be patient and it will get there.
Okay, so you know, I may not be there this afternoon, but you know, you all will see this presentation live, so you have the benefit of that. But for those who aren't here, they'll be able to get to it within a day or two. We should have it up and running.
Question over here,
Yes.
if you decide to go only to a YouTube video presentation, is there a mechanism you thought about for any questions that the audience member may have that we can get answers to?
Yeah, this is, you know, this is all theoretical at this point, so we'd have to, you know, figure out how the mechanics of doing all of this. Okay, it's March.
Well, Shelley, I think that if they had questions, they could come into the lab and get those questions answered in most cases.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there are ways of doing it. We can do it, you know, as David said, you can come into the lab. We can do it over the phone, over email. So, you know, these things we'll explore in the coming days. It's March, so spring is here, and spring is always spring cleaning. So why not spring clean your computers? And so this is something, if you want to bring in your computer into the lab, we're open on Mondays and Thursday mornings and Tuesday evenings from 5:30 to 8:30. And we can clean out all the junk files that you have on your computer and get it running a little bit better.
Does that include shampoo and conditioner?
You have to bring in your own shampoo, sure. And yeah, and certainly keep your computers clean, especially, you know, things like the mouse, the keyboard, and and your monitor.
And we have hand sanitizer.
You don't want to wash your computer though. And when you come into the lab, don't forget to bring in your passwords. Sometimes we have to send people home because they can't remember what their passwords were, and then we can't get into their computers to do what we might need to do to get it running. And check our newsletters. We'll be sending out emails to how plans and schedules go from here on in. Our photography group will be resuming April 1st. That's not an April Fool's joke, so that's when it's scheduled to resume is Wednesday, April 1st. Meets on the first Wednesday of each month at 7 o'clock. And the Apple group meets on the second and fourth Tuesday at 9 in the morning in the lab. So, with that, here's the schedule of our classes that we have for this month, for March. And I'll bring up Ralph to talk about our classes and training.
Thanks, Shelley. Well, good morning on this beautiful day. Oh my goodness. No viruses out there, I hope. But anyway, I want to add a little bit to what Ken was saying on the YouTube. And he was so kind when he said, sometimes it's not there. Well, the reason it's not there is I probably didn't push the right button. Oh, man. If there's anybody out there that'd be interested in helping with the recording, we'd sure like to have more than one or two of us that can, maybe three now that can do it. So check with anybody at the lab if you'd be interested in helping. You can see the classes that are listed. I'm not going to go over them other than one class. Next Tuesday, we thought we were going to take and deviate a little bit from the norm and do something a little bit that didn't really directly pertain to a computer. And many people are talking about solar panels. And Kevin made up a nice spreadsheet where you could take home and put all your figures in to find out if it was beneficial to you or not. Because he said they did a couple of houses and one was right next door to each other. One of them was for, one of them it wasn't for. Well, Kevin has a situation where he's very susceptible to any type of viruses, and we're going to have to cancel that class. It'll also come out from David later today that this class is canceled. So if you're planning on attending, it won't be next Tuesday. I'm going to talk to him. Maybe it'll be later on, depending on how the virus situation goes, or possibly Shelley had an idea. Maybe we'll record it and put it on our website, just with the camera. So just kind of be watching for that. Sorry about it, but you know, his health's more important than whether you need this solar or not. But there's a few more classes this month. You can see them up there, and you'll get notice in your email today. I can tell you for the spring session, that's April, May, and June. Already we have 20 classes scheduled. Depending on what happens with the restrictions and with this virus, we plan to have them. So hopefully you'll start attending classes. Our attendance has been good. Recently it's dropped off a little bit, I think probably because of the scare. The last couple of classes have been light. But like I think David said, there's hand sanitizer there. We'll try to keep things clean, and maybe rather than shake hands, we can just take and bump elbows or something like that. But please try to come to the classes. I'll be at some of them. Hope to see you there.
Thank you, Ralph. And going on to community matters, the next board meeting for Sun City is Wednesday, March 25th at 9 in the morning. And those are now being held in the Birch Room over at Fountain View rather than in this room. Early voting, if you haven't voted yet for the primary, they're doing early voting. Today's your last chance to avoid the rush next week. So you can get there. It's right next to the CAM desk, and they'll be there till 4:30 this afternoon. And then we do have a full schedule of concerts. It's business as usual with the concerts. So there's a Roy Orbison tribute concert on the 19th, Celine Dion concert on the 30th, and a Carole King concert on April the 8th. And I don't know if any of you were here last night, but there was we had a big crowd, almost a full house with the Heartache Tonight Eagles tribute concert, and so they were rocking the house last night. And then tickets for the theater group presentation of Beauty and the Beast go on sale at the end of the month on Monday, March 30th. Okay, and with that, we're ready to introduce Jeff Stipes, who's going to give us a really good presentation on how to take pictures with your smartphone, be it an iPhone or an Android phone or what have you. It is a medium you can use for photography as well. So, Jeff?
Morning.
Morning, Jeff.
How many of you have one of these?
How many don't have?
You see, you've just answered the classic question. What's the best phone to have?
When you
The
got
one that's with you, exactly. Before I start, I want to take 3 minutes and 16 seconds and show you smartphone photos. These photos are from 4 of our photo group members. So like I said, just sit back for the next 3 minutes and 16 seconds and enjoy what they've done.
All of those by smartphone.
As I said, every one of those was shot with a smartphone. Okay, I want to spend a little bit of time talking to you about the smartphone. Okay. About the smartphone, and then we'll take a look at some of the basic issues. In 2010, compact camera hit a high, sold 120 million units. At that point, the manufacturers of the smartphone said, this is a market we want. And they immediately pursued that market. The challenge was these 10 items. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the hardware is different and it created some unique challenges. By 2017, compact camera sales had reduced by 81%. So we know who took over. The reason they took the market was because of artificial intelligence and what we call computational photography, basically software. Because there are some hardware things that the smartphone can't do, but they found a way to compensate for that with the software. In addition, smartphone ownership is up. At this point, 81% of all Americans have a smartphone. Now that's not counting the people that still have a flip phone. This is just smartphone. So what I want to do is look at some of the challenges that were involved in that transition. Optics, 5 of these things. The most difficult one is going to be the last one, the composition. But let's take a look at some issues that they dealt with, and I'll give you a better idea of what your smartphone can do and does do. With optics, the first thing to understand about optics is this issue of focal length. Focal length is the distance from the sensor to the lens. And the longer that focal length is, the more restricted is the field of view. Smartphones, if you take a look at the one on the right, the 2 lens ones typically are 26 and 52 millimeter focal length. And that means that's the distance from the lens to the sensor. So if we look at what's happened, they started out with a single lens, 26 millimeters. Then they moved to the dual lens of 26 and 52. And now they're at the 3 lens of 26, 52, 13. The issue here is that they've not until recently been able to do a zoom lens. And what you have to understand about an optical zoom is it's a lens that's optical that maintains a resolution all the way through the zoom. None of these are zoom. Telephoto, yeah, but not truly telephoto because 52 millimeters on a focal length is what you see with your eye. That's your basic vision. So what I did is I asked a couple of our members to take a shot. Frank took this one, and I asked him to take a shot of an object in the house and then to do a digital zoom, and we'll talk about the digital zoom because that's what they've had to do in terms of getting a close-up digital zoom, and then do what we call a foot zoom, which simply means walk up to it and shoot it. You can notice the difference in the 2 images. You can notice the difference in quality. And that's the first thing that you want to think about with your smartphone camera, all right? Granted, there are situations where you have to use the zoom that's there, but if you can get closer, you're going to get a better picture rather than zooming in with the camera. A couple of years ago, we had a presentation by a local professional photographer, Karen Fleck. And Karen said when she was in photography school, she had a professor who always said, just remember, we aren't farmers, we don't crop. Judy took this one for me. Notice again the same situation. Took the lamppost at the distance and then did the digital zoom and then walked up to it. And I don't want to belabor this, but you can see the difference in quality of the image. So the whole issue here is if you're able to physically get closer to it, do that rather than just zoom in with your phone. Now, this digital cropping, it's gotten much better than it used to be. And what they've done is they've moved to a process that's called interpolation. So here I've got an image, and let's say I want to do a crop on my phone. I digitally crop into it, and I want about 56% of the image, which means I'm going to throw away that outer part. In respect to the image, that means I'm throwing away almost 4 million pixels of light, pixels of data from it. Now, what has to happen once that's done is now the image has to be brought back up to full size, what basically it was before. And they do that through a process called interpolation. And what that does is it adds in colored pixels. I want to show you how that works. So here I've got 2 blocks. I've got a 6x6 block, and I want to increase that to a 11x11 block. So what the camera does, this is the computational software in the camera. What the camera is going to do is it's going to take those existing pixels and it's going to spread them out. So you notice, and from 6 to 11 is about 55%, about the same as that image I showed you earlier. That leaves 85 empty spots, and what it has to do is it has to come in here and it has to calculate between each one and figure out what color would go in the missing spot. And there's the result. Now you can see it's a pretty darn good image, but not quite as good. So you're going to lose, anytime you do that, you're going to lose some of the resolution. And again, that's the issue behind why you want to try and get as close as you can to take the picture rather than use that digital crop on the camera, because you're going to start to lose quality. So here's one of our photos. This is what I did. I cropped in there and brought it up. And it's not a bad image. In fact, it's going to be quite a good image if what you're doing is putting it on social media. If you're passing it to somebody else to view on their camera, if you're putting it out on Facebook or something else, it's not a bad image. But if I want to bring that up into PowerPoint or print it, you can see how it degrades. You can actually see the problem with it, how it becomes blurry and fuzzy. All right, these guys are incredible. New technology. I said that up until present they didn't have a zoom lens, but they do now. But they've actually gone to two technologies. The first technology is what's called a sensor crop. They've taken the sensor in the camera, remember they have limited space, and they've taken that sensor in the camera, and typically your camera sensors are 12 megapixels, 12 million little receptors for light. So what they've done is they've taken these and they've packed in more pixels. They've packed in 84 million pixels. Now that means each one is smaller, okay? They don't capture the light as good, but they got a lot more of them. And what they do with this is now instead of cropping on the image, they crop in on the sensor to get that. And they never crop in beyond 12 megapixels, which is what you normally have. Now, in this situation, you're going to have a much better image than you had with the interpolation process, but still it's not going to be quite as good because the pixels are a little bit smaller. A couple cameras now have actually added a zoom lens to the camera. And if you understand zoom lenses, it's a problem because they move in and out. They got a series of things. And this camera's just not thick enough to do that. So what they did is they mounted it sideways. And then they use a prism, or it's called a periscope lens. So the light comes in through the prism or periscope lens and back to the sensor. And so now they have room here for those lenses to be able to give you some true optical zoom on it. But then some whiz kid said, you know, why don't we put the two together? All right, so the periscope lens is often referred to as a folded optical. So what they've done now is in that sensor, they've kicked it up to 108 pixels, 108 megapixels, and then simply do a sensor crop on it. So now you've got the zoom, you can't do a full zoom. And these cameras, like the Samsung S20, is purported to be 100 times zoom. Okay, so in essence, you take what the basic, which means that the focal length of that thing represents about 1,300 millimeters of focal length, which is incredible with the two technologies. Everything has an upside and a downside, so we talk about the good and the bad. Here's the problem. If you're going to use that extensive zoom on your smartphone, I can assure you, even with the image stabilization on, there is no way you are going to be able to hold it steady enough to get the picture. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to put it on the tripod. But that's only part of the situation, because now you've got the issue where you've got to touch, you got to physically touch the camera to take the picture, and that's going to put movement into it. So now you need to go out and get yourself a Bluetooth remote. Well, you know, it kind of undermines the idea of the smartphone camera. I mean, how many smartphone photographers you see, or people, how many of you are walking around with a tripod? It's not happening, all right? So, you know, it's just the start of the technology. Give it time, it'll get better, but there are limitations.
We do have voice acting.
Pardon?
Voice acting.
Okay, what are the other challenges? Bokeh, okay. Not bokeh, not bouquet, all right? The word is pronounced bow as in bow and arrow, key as in kettle, bokeh. Stupid word, okay? We'll just refer to it as background blur. The cameras offer a portrait mode. And the portrait mode is what gives you this background blur. And why do you want that? This is the reason, all right? The image on the right, it's the same image. A problem with the image on the right, even though it's a good image, is look at the distractions. You not only see the girl, you see the house behind, you see the grass, everything's in sharp focus, and it detracts from the image. Where when you're able to blur the background, she stands out because you're not distracted by that background image. Now, that was done with the smartphone in portrait mode. What you want to understand about portrait mode is it doesn't have to be just people. It can be objects. So here again, can Frank take a picture of the lamp using portrait mode? Notice the soft blur of the door itself behind. And again, by blurring out that background, and you can do it to a more or less degree, what it does is it causes the primary focal point of the photo to look sharper, to look more, again, to be better. Just some examples of portrait mode. What the portrait mode is doing is by software, it's simulating what a full-blown camera can do with an aspect called aperture. With your full digital cameras, aperture basically means you can restrict down the size of the opening on the lens and open it up. And that's what gives you that real sharp or that background blur. Smartphones don't have aperture control on them. Doesn't mean they never will, but right now they don't. So what they do it with is they do it with software. They simulate it with computational software. And if you notice, here it is, okay, down here at a f16, everything is sharp. You move that over to a 4.5 and notice how the background starts to blur, and then you move it down to 1.4 and the background completely blurred. And the beauty of that with your smartphone is that you can dial it in. You can take the image with the portrait mode, and then once you've got it, you can adjust, okay, that f value and gain the amount of blur you want or don't want. In some cases you want a lot of it, other cases you may not want quite as much. But that's a feature that you need to learn to use on your camera to enhance those pictures. Also with the new cameras, you can set focus. You can pick the focus point. You don't have to just let the camera decide where the focus is. You can pick it. You can touch the screen and identify where you want the focus to be. And the benefit to that is, you know, with the picture on the right, I don't want the focus somewhere out here. I want it right on that flower. Right? So again, learn to use that feature. Pick your focus and pick the shot. Dynamic range. Dynamic range is a challenge for all cameras. This is not a challenge that's unique to the smartphone camera. All right. Here's a classic image. All right. The camera, and I don't care what kind of camera you have, the camera cannot see this. It can see any of these 5, but it can't see the big one. And the reason is the contrast between the light and the dark. Now, why can we see that? Because our brain is smarter than the processor in the camera. We can see it. Our eyes, we can see the image, and we see all the different contrasts, and our brain is able to put that together into a quality image. So we don't have a problem with it, but the camera does. So what they use is a process called high dynamic range, which means the camera is going to take a number of pictures, some low, some high contrast, and it's going to put them together to gain all the properties it needs. Here's how it happens. Upper left-hand corner is the normal picture. Just shot this out of the window from the lot. The upper left-hand corner is the normal picture that the camera does. That's what the camera can do. Basically, left it on. So, okay, here's how I'm going to do it. Now, if we overexpose it, the one on the right, you notice how the sunlight area is all blurred out. But look how much sharper the foreground is. And then it takes another shot underexposing it, and you notice how dark this is, but how good the sky looks. The camera then, your smartphone camera in the HDR or high dynamic range mode, then puts those images together to create that image. And that's the image you saw. That's the image your eye would see. But again, understand, that's not the image the camera can see. The only way the camera can do that is by taking multiple exposures at different contrast levels or different speed and put them together to create that image for you. But it's built into the camera, and if you have a camera that has the HDR or high dynamic range mode on it. Here's some shots. These were by Judy, took these for me, and these are HDR photos. Incredibly good photos, but what I want you to pay attention to is look at the difference in contrast. If she had not had that in the HDR mode, this photo would not be good. It would either be too dark or too bright in those areas. Should give you an idea of what that mode will do for you. Low light photography. Low light photography has been a constant bane of existence for the smartphone camera, but not anymore if you have the low light option on the newer cameras. What it does is it uses the same or some aspects of the HDR technology, multiple photos combined to gain that. And so what it's doing is it's adjusting it, and the software is saying, okay, normal shutter speed would be right there. That's what you'd see. But if I can keep the shutter open for 3 seconds, that's what you'd see. And if I can keep the shutter open for 7 seconds, that's what you would see. Now understand, there is virtually no way with the smartphone camera, or even with the digital camera, even a full-blown one, that you're going to hold that thing steady for 3 or 7 seconds. All right? What it's done is it's taken the image, it's taken multiple images, and pulled out what it needs to be able to give those settings. And again, you can pick what you want. You can adjust the amount of brightness you want or don't want. iPhone with the night mode. Pixel camera with the night mode. It's built in. This is the biggest challenge, the art of seeing the image. Of the 48 members in our photo group, I would say that less than 10% of them have the ability to just naturally see the image, see the best composition. That's the bad news. The good news is the rest of us can learn to do it. I'm going to look at some of those things. With your smartphone, because you've always got it with you, you may have hundreds and hundreds of pictures, and most of them are just snapshots. You know, you got the thing with you, you take a shot here, you take a shot there. You got a nice skillet breakfast of Papa G's, you take a shot of that. You know, you've got just hundreds and hundreds of pictures, and what's happening is you're not paying attention to the composition or the way the picture should look. Composition is probably the most difficult thing for the photographer to deal with. Photography is one of the few visual arts that does not start with a blank canvas. The image is in front of you, okay? You can't set it up. It's there, and you have to figure out how to best get it. So what I want to do, and before I do that, let's take a quick look at this, because I know this becomes an issue for a lot of people in the lab. The cameras today save the picture in 2 different formats. They save it in a JPEG format and a high efficiency format. The JPEG format is nice. It's cross-platform. You can put it almost anywhere. If you're, for example, if you're submitting an image to any kind of magazine, any kind of competition stuff, it has to be JPEG. Problem is, it takes up a lot of space. So the cameras have what's called the high efficiency mode, HEIF or HEIC, and it takes about half the space. The difficulty with that is that photo in that format doesn't always fit with something you want to put on, but social media or whatever. However, people in the lab can help you make that transition, get those changed over to JPEGs if you need it. Okay. Basic composition. What can you do to make your pictures better? You know what the camera does now. What can you do? How do you read a photograph? Well, left to right, we read left to right, and then lower left to upper right. That's basically when we look at a graphic image, fundamentally that's how we view it. Now, a lot of these are called rules. I don't like to call them rules, they're guidelines, all right? So one thing that you can do, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to touch on each guideline, and then I'm going to show you an image from one of our smartphone photographers in the group that simulates that or shows you what that would look like. Rule of thirds. Simply like a tic-tac-toe grid on your smartphone. And what you want to do is you don't want to necessarily put the object dead center. If you got a horizon line, put it at one of the grids. If you got an object out here, put it on one of the grid lines. Improves the photo. So, rule of thirds, there's your image. Excellent rule of thirds, that's smartphone image. Excellent rule of thirds image. Notice where the horizon line is, okay? Called lean in. If you're shooting an animal, you're shooting a person, what you want to do is you want to give them space to move into. Nobody's watching back here, no, unless there's something chasing them. But nobody's watching back here. We don't care about back here. What we care about is a place to move to. Now, here's the rooster. All right, Frank's rooster. And it's got room to move. But there's a way we can improve this photo. And we're going to talk later on about some in-camera processing with a couple packages like Snapseed and PhotoExpress. There's a simple way we can improve this photo. We can just flip it. And why do we want to do that? Because we look at the image from what? Left to right, yeah. And now the rooster's going the way our eye is going. Now, you don't always want to do that. Obviously, you don't want to do that. You don't want to flip it. If you're taking a shot where somebody's going to obviously know that, oh, no, it doesn't set up that way. But, you know, it improves it. Fill the frame. One of the big problems that every photographer has, especially amateurs and enthusiasts, is you shoot more than you need. Just way too much. And you say, well, I can crop it down. Well, I already talked about some of the aspects, some of the drawbacks to cropping it down. Fill the frame. Balance. Three issues of balance. Symmetrical, where it's right in the middle. It's okay to put in the middle, and it's a simplistic picture. Right in the middle is where it should be. Notice that the grasses around it are just slightly blurred. Didn't go for a lot of blur. The one up on the right, the owls are on the right, the trees on the left, balance it. You just don't want to have something that's out of balance where you've got this image over on one side and absolutely nothing of any consequence beside it. Balance, asymmetrical balance. Leading lines, okay? If you have things in your photo that the eye will follow, the floorboards up, this is up in the Dole Mansion, the floorboards lead your eye right down to the door where we want you to see, or the stairway. So it doesn't have to be a straight line. It's just it's something in the image, and it's not always there, but you should look for it. It's something that will lead the eye through the image. Excellent example of leading lines. Judy's picture. What, house of 5 chimneys, 7 chimneys? 7 chimneys. But the path takes you right down. Foreground. In a landscape picture, foreground adds depth to your image. Don't exclude it. Emphasis and subordination. And that's basically is blurring the background. You know, we've been there before. We're blurring the background. And it's a simple way to what? Draw the focus, draw the eye to what you want to see. The objective is that horse with the nice plume on its head. Blur out the back, shoot it in portrait mode. Repetition. Repetition is an excellent compositional element. If you see it, it can be as simple as a picket fence. Contrast. Contrast can be big and small, it can be two contrasting colors, or it can be light and dark. Contrast. Again, remember, these are smartphone photos. Frame in a frame. The thing to remember about framing is the frame can be behind the image, like the window up at the Opera House with the flower pot, or, in front of it, or like the one out in Bryce, it can be behind it. The frame doesn't have to be right in front of it. It could be behind it or in front of the primary image. All right, focal point. This is my big oops. This was at Gettysburg, and I thought, the stack of cannonballs is the focal point I want, and that's what I shot. And everybody looks at it and says, man, you're looking right down the barrel of the cannon. They don't see the, so there's focal point. There's an emphasis on focal point. Most of the cameras, the newer cameras, have what's called a burst mode or continuous shoot mode. The benefit to that is if you've got something that's moving, something that changes, shoot it in burst mode, and one of those images is going to be the one you want. There's no way you'd have gotten the flags probably like that. Maybe if you got real lucky, but if you put it in burst mode, you get 7 or 8 shots, and then one of them is going to be what you want as that thing is blowing and moving. Panorama, man, the smartphones probably do the best panoramas you can ask for. You simply put it on and just move your camera through it, and it takes the picture. Now, here's where people screw up with panorama. They do this. What you want to do with panorama is you want to bring your elbows into your body, and you don't want to do this. You want to rotate like that. And that keeps the camera level, brings the picture through. And you'll find that if you do that, if you pay attention to how they do that, your panoramas are going to be much better. All right. Helpful tips. We're almost done. Where do you keep it? In your pocket, in your purse? The lens doesn't have a lens cap on it. Okay? 3 great things to have. One that you should always have with you if you're going to take pictures is the old microfiber cloth. Just clean it off. Now, Moment makes a lens pen. But what you want to look for, if you're looking for the Moment lens pen, is you want to get the one for the mobile device because it has the real small tip on it that allows you to clean smudges off. If you get the basic one, it's for a full-blown camera, it's going to be too big, but they make a mobile one to clean that lens off. So you got a fingerprint or a glue and grease stain on that. The other thing is lens cleaners. Now, what you want to be careful of is make sure that the one you buy is certified for use on both plastic and polycarbonate. Okay, so we're looking at this, and what are we looking at? 34 bucks investment to keep your lens clean. Okay, back again to holding the lens. Try to always hold it with your elbows in and steady. One of the issues with the smartphone is touching the front of it to do that. Now, I understand, I haven't seen that some of the phones, you can actually use the volume control button to take the image. If you have that feature, that's what you want to use, because what you're doing is it causes less vibration and movement to the phone than pushing on the phone or touching the phone, if you have that feature. The other thing is, if your camera can bring up the grid, bring it up. It simply helps you compose the picture. If you're shooting a landscape picture, one of the rules of thumb is landscape versus portrait mode. Sure, landscape, you're mostly going to shoot it like this. But you should also take a look at one of the key features and shoot a few shots in portrait mode. Same image, okay? Just the difference, look at what you get. And it's not to say that one is better than the other, but now you've got 2 to pick from. Don't be adverse to converting a picture to black and white. If there's high contrast in it, black and white images may be much better than the color image. Now here's my favorite, and this is probably the one issue that most of us have trouble with, and it's patience. We're out with somebody and they're moving down, and it's hard to say, I'm gonna stay right here for a few minutes and shoot. So I went up to Crystal Lake when they had the Budweiser Clydesdales there. And I kind of liked this guy in the lead. And so I was standing right over here. I was there for quite a while. So I figured this guy, just, you know, he's gonna do something. Pretty soon, no, he does better. He smiles at me. If I had not waited around, I never would have had that picture. Two software packages for your camera, Snapseed and Adobe Photo Express. And they are both retirement priced. They're free. Put them on your phone. You can then do some editing on your phone. Remember what old Ansel Adams said, you don't take a good photo, you make it. Photos sometimes need some editing, okay? So Judy did a couple Snapseed things for me. There's the picture. Here it was edited with Snapseed, brightened up, tightened in. And one of the things that we know is that that software will do a better job of a digital crop than the camera can do. Snapseed of the two tends to be the more popular. In fact, we've even offered some classes on Snapseed up in the lab. So, and it's right there on your phone, and you can sit around and edit your phone. The photos right there in your phone. You may not need to edit it, but if you want to brighten it up a little bit or crop it down a little bit, that resource is right there at your hands. Library. How many of you have a library card? Got a PIN number? Okay, you heard of Linda? Ralph's talked to me about Linda. We got a link on the Computer Club website to Linda. It's a paid program, but if you have a library card here, you got access to it at no charge. And Linda has what's called a mobile photograph weekly. And this guy out here, and there's a whole slew of, I think he started back in about 2017 or 2018. Every week he does a little thing on the smartphone. And these aren't more than 5 or 6 minute video clips. And it's well worth looking through, and maybe there's something in there that might help you do better. With that said, I would invite you to join us. Sun City Photographer Group, you do not have to be a photographer. You can simply be a person who enjoys photos, and you're welcome even if you don't shoot to come to the meetings and enjoy the photos the members submit. We do a variety of workshops. We meet the first Wednesday of every month, and it would be my pleasure to see you there. Thank you.
Do you have any questions? Everybody, let's give them a round of welcoming. The best presentation we had in a long time.
Jeff, we got Snapseed coming up in April or May.
Snapseed's coming up in April and May.
Jeff, you talked about the panorama view. When you were doing it, you moved, when you demonstrated that, do you move left to right only?
You could move both ways, my understanding, but I would move left to right. Anytime I've shot panoramas, I always move left to right, but I don't think there's restricted to that.
So, if you move, let's say left to right, you want to add, or it doesn't matter if you move back and forth?
Oh, you don't want to go back and forth.
Okay.
You had one picture up there that had a tree that was, the whole background was black and white. How did you do that?
I didn't do it. You can do that. You can do that in Snapseed.
You can in
Yeah.
Snapseed?
Yeah, but that's post-process.
Oh,
In fact, one of the nice things you can do is a process called selective color. Maybe you've seen selective color. You've seen the picture, a black and white picture of the woman, and you see the red lipstick. Okay, or you see the old Oldsmobile that had the lighted hood in it, and it's in black and white. The hood. That's all post-process. But those things are
what?
post-process. It's done with software, third-party software, like Snapseed or Photo Express.
Okay, but you can do that on Snapseed.
I believe you can, yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Apple iOS is a new upgrade, and they did a lot with soil enhancements. What do you think of what they did? And two, your opinion of selfie sticks?
Okay. I taught at the college for 26 years. I wrote for McGraw-Hill on PCs. I don't compute on the dark side. No, I can't answer about the Apple, but I can certainly answer to you about the selfie sticks. All right. If you get blur by holding your camera out here, what do you think you get when you put it on a stick out here?
My question is, a lot of times I'll take pictures and then I want to print them, but the quality is not good.
Yeah.
What is that software can fix that, or just the pixels on the lens?
And you zoomed in?
Yes and no. Some of them have, some I haven't.
Okay. If at all possible, like I said, if at all possible, you don't want to do the digital zoom on the camera. You want to try to get close. Okay. If you can't, then in most cases, doing that crop with third-party software is going to provide a better image than the camera can. But understand there's limitations. Okay. If you're going to try and print something bigger than 8 by 10, you're probably going to have a problem with it. You know, it starts to get a bit grainy.
So I had a finished tablet I took with a Samsung, and it came out, I printed it out, it's bigger than 8 by 10. And it came out nice, so it's just a matter of.
Just a matter of what you did. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Should we always keep that HDR on?
No, no. The HDR basically is a feature that needs a drastic difference in contrast. Okay? If you don't have a big difference in contrast, having it on isn't going to do you any good. Probably one of the best examples, if you want a good example of that, is shoot a picture in your house. Take a day when it's a nice bright day out where you got a nice blue sky out the window and something in your down, and don't put it on and shoot a picture of that and notice what happens, and then put that on and shoot the same picture and notice the difference, because there's a substantial difference in contrast of what you see in the room and what you see out there. It's when you've got that major difference in contrast. Like I said, if the difference in contrast is not there, you're not going to see the HDR do much for you.
Thank you. I want to thank you for your presentation, but I'm curious, what music did you use on that slide display? Do you mind?
I don't mind. It came out of Mason. You ever heard of Mason Williams?
Yeah.
Guitar player Mason Williams with he did that with oh come on, the guys that did the Christmas thing. The group.
Mannheim Steamroller?
Mannheim Steamroller, yeah. Yeah, he did that with Mannheim Steamroller. There's a Mason Williams Mannheim Steamroller CD out there, and I can't recall the name of it. It was a foreign name.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
I was wondering about why words turn backwards, and I saw your one of the theater and all the words were backwards. Is there any way not to have that happen, or why does that happen?
It's a reflection. You know, it's like when you. No, I'm not really sure how you would fix that. I mean, you can try and flip it and see if it throws it.
Yeah, it's flipping gets a little bit confusing on a lot of the programs. They don't really have it clearly marked how you flip them. I know in Picasso you just use Control H and V for vertical shift and horizontal shift,
Yeah,
and it's not marked anywhere.
it would be a horizontal flip. You would want to try a horizontal flip with it and see if that would correct it.
Yeah, some places you'll have to go on Google and type in the horizontal flip. It seems like a lot of the manufacturers of the software just ignored it. As you're gonna know, I don't know what they're thinking, but they do seem to list it. Wait a second. We just hear, whoa. Just nothing.
I just took a picture of the screen and it's not backwards. Why?
But the screen's not a
Well, that was a combination picture. It was most likely for, she flipped the one picture that had the text on. Yeah,
Yeah, your screen's not a reflection.
It was a reflection, Frank.
it was a reflection, okay. Yeah, it was a reflection from a building shining on a window that was the text.
It's the reflection that does it.
Yeah, it was a reflection, so the reflection was at an angle, so it came backwards. Anybody else?
Thank you and have a good day.
Okay, let's give them a good hand. Thank you.